As the king and queen leave the thrones and head for the exit of Westminster Abbey of the coronation ceremony, you'll see that everyone bows and curtsies to the king, and no one moves a limb, a muscle, when Camilla passes.
The royal family had survived scandals, betrayals, and years of private resentment. But nothing prepared King Charles for the moment Queen Camilla turned her anger toward Prince George in front of Catherine. One cutting accusation changed the atmosphere instantly. The young heir froze, his mother stepped forward, and the king, caught between his wife and his grandson, suddenly lost the calm that had protected him through decades of royal crisis. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles had called the family to Windsor Castle to discuss George's growing public role. A constitutional event, meaning a formal occasion tied to the crown and its duties, was approaching, and the boy was expected to stand beside William. Catherine had assured her son that the gathering was only a formality. Yet on entering, she felt Camilla's attention settle on him. Camilla waited until the conversation turned to the procession. Then she struck. She accused George of behaving as though the crown belonged to him, and declared that he was being raised with arrogance. Worse followed. The Queen said the child needed to be put back in his place before expectation became entitlement. George lowered his eyes. Catherine saw the shock moving through him. She pulled her chair closer, placed a hand on his shoulder, and told Camilla that no adult would humiliate her child to settle an argument with his parents. Her voice remained controlled. Her anger did not. Charles asked everyone to calm down. Camilla refused. She claimed Catherine had encouraged George to see himself as untouchable, and the accusation cut deeper, because the boy was struggling not to cry. That was the moment the king broke. Charles slammed his hand against the table and rose so quickly that a water glass shook beside his papers. He ordered Camilla to stop. Then he told her that attacking a child in his presence was beyond forgiveness. Camilla went silent, but the damage was done. Charles revealed that he had warned her before never to drag George into disputes with William and Catherine. Catherine heard the truth behind that confession. This had not been sudden. The Queen had been studying the young heir, waiting for the right weakness to strike. Catherine guided George toward the door, but Charles asked her to remain. His voice had changed. What he was about to admit would explain why Camilla had chosen the future king as her target. The attack was brief, but to understand why Camilla crossed that line, the palace first had to confront what every person in the room stood to lose. Behind the crowns and titles stood a frightened child, a protective mother, an aging grandfather, and a woman who believed her place was slipping away. Prince George had entered the room expecting guidance. Instead, he became the center of a struggle he barely understood. Catherine saw a wound forming. Charles saw history repeating itself. And Camilla saw the future approaching without any promise that she would remain powerful within it. George was no longer treated as William and Catherine's eldest son. He stood second in line to the throne, meaning only his father came before him in the order of succession. Every gesture carried weight, because the monarchy could eventually rest on his shoulders. Catherine understood that burden, which was why she had protected his childhood fiercely. George stopped in the corridor and looked up at his mother. He asked whether Camilla had been right about him. Catherine felt the question like a blow. She knelt, held his hands, and told him that knowing his future did not make him arrogant. The boy nodded, but the doubt still remained. Charles stayed inside the chamber as the door closed. He could not escape the memory of William being judged before he understood the rules, or Harry growing bitter beneath constant comparison. Now the same cold pressure had reached his grandson, and the king knew he had allowed it to happen. Charles removed his glasses and pressed his fingers against his eyes. He admitted directly to Catherine that he should have stopped Camilla sooner. She did not accuse him. Her silence was worse. It told the monarch that regret meant little when a child had already been wounded. Camilla feared something Catherine had sensed for months. The Queen believed George's growing importance was shrinking her own place. She saw herself becoming a temporary bridge between Charles and the stronger generation waiting behind him. That fear had turned Catherine's son into a threat. Charles then confessed that Camilla had repeatedly questioned whether George was emotionally ready for royal duty. He had treated those remarks as concern. Now he understood they formed a pattern. Catherine reached into her folder and placed a revised ceremonial schedule before him. A ceremonial schedule was the official plan governing where royals stood, moved, and appeared during formal events. The handwritten instruction ordered George to undergo extra protocol assessments without his mother's approval. Charles read the note twice. Then he set it down without speaking. Catherine watched his face harden. The king finally asked who had encouraged Camilla to interfere in the boy's preparation. The answer led back to one ceremony, one private remark, and the moment the queen's fear became something far more dangerous. Every royal rupture has a moment that appears insignificant until the damage is done. In this case, it was not a leaked letter or a public scandal. It was a quiet ceremony, a misplaced remark, and the expression on Camilla's face when she realized the future had moved forward without consulting her. From that instant, Prince George stopped being only a child in her eyes. He became a symbol of a monarchy in which her influence had an expiration date. 3 weeks before the Windsor confrontation, the family gathered at Buckingham Palace for a rehearsal ahead of a national service. A national service is a royal ceremony marking an event of public importance. George was asked to walk beside Charles during the procession, placing him at the center of attention. Catherine hesitated. She knew the duty would expose her son to pressure beyond his age. Charles reassured her that George would be guided at every step, while Camilla watched without protest. Yet the Queen's silence carried something colder than agreement. Charles placed a hand on George's shoulder and addressed the family. "One day, all of this will depend on him," the king said. Warm approval moved through the room. Camilla did not move. She heard not encouragement, but a warning that the monarchy was already looking beyond her. An equerry then placed George's briefing folder beside Camilla by mistake. An equerry is a royal aide who helps organize official duties. She opened it and found the boy assigned a position once reserved for senior working royals, family members who perform public duties for the crown. Camilla confronted Charles in a side chamber and demanded to know why she had not been consulted. He replied that the future of the crown did not require her approval. The Queen heard humiliation. She accused Catherine of using George to build a rival court around William. Charles called it jealousy. Camilla later removed a bracelet and struck it against the dressing table. Fear overtook anger. The ceremony had shown her how quickly royal attention could move elsewhere. Camilla began requesting reports on George's conduct during rehearsals, meals, and appearances. She called it concern for protocol. But Catherine discovered that a senior aide had been ordered to record every interruption, distraction, and uninvited remark. William told Catherine in private that the surveillance had to stop. She warned him that confronting Camilla too soon might provoke something worse. Then Charles learned that his wife had created a file on his grandson. The Windsor explosion was no longer an isolated insult. It was the end of a campaign, and the king was ready to force Camilla to explain every part of it. Once Prince George was safely away, Charles ordered the doors closed. There were no cameras, no advisors, and no prepared language to shield the marriage. Only the king, the queen, Catherine, and words that could no longer be withdrawn. Camilla had expected anger. She had not expected her husband to accuse her of targeting the monarchy's future. And she had certainly not expected Catherine to reveal that every secret instruction had been uncovered. Catherine returned after asking a trusted staff member to stay with George. Her face remained calm, but fury tightened every word she refused to speak. Charles stood beside the table, reports waiting between him and Camilla like evidence. Camilla tried to seize control. She said the confrontation had been exaggerated, and insisted she had only corrected the boy before his behavior became a constitutional problem. A constitutional problem meant an issue that could damage the crown's role or stability. Charles immediately rejected the excuse. Charles pushed the folder toward his wife and demanded to know why she had ordered aides to observe his grandson. Camilla answered that someone had to protect the crown from Catherine's ambition. The accusation landed hard, but the Princess of Wales stepped forward instead of retreating. Catherine told Camilla that George was not a weapon, rival, or political project. She said the Queen had attacked a child because she lacked the courage to confront his parents directly. Camilla fired back, accusing her of quietly preparing to replace her. Catherine did not deny that the monarchy had a future beyond the current reign. That calm answer cut deeper than any insult. Camilla heard confirmation of her greatest fear. Charles opened the folder and removed one instruction. "Confidence must be corrected before it becomes expectation," the king read aloud. Then he tore the page in half and dropped it onto the table. Charles told his wife that George had trusted her. His voice shook as he remembered the boy once asking to sit beside Camilla at a family lunch. The memory turned the argument into betrayal. Catherine then revealed, through copies obtained from George's tutor, that Camilla's aides had requested private observations about the child's personality. The Queen had crossed from royal protocol into his personal life. Charles announced that the household office, the staff system managing royal duties, would investigate every instruction issued in Camilla's name. She understood that her authority was now at risk. Catherine moved toward the door and warned that William had not heard the exact words spoken to George. Charles had confronted his wife as a husband and grandfather. The next battle would concern power, because William was about to enter as the future king. William did not shout when he heard what had happened. His silence was more frightening. He listened, as Catherine repeated Camilla's words, looked toward the corridor where Prince George was waiting, and made a decision that altered the balance inside the family. The future king would no longer permit royal hierarchy to place his children within Camilla's reach. Charles still wore the crown, but in that moment, his eldest son began exercising the authority of what came next. William arrived after Catherine contacted him privately. She repeated the accusation without embellishment, while George remained in another room with the family nanny and refused to discuss what had happened. The prince understood the danger immediately. This was not only emotional harm to his son, it was interference in how the monarchy's next generation would be prepared for duty. William asked whether George had cried. Catherine answered that he waited until the corridor was empty. The future king gripped the back of a chair, and briefly, his control disappeared. Charles tried to explain. He said he had stopped Camilla, condemned her words, and ordered an investigation. William answered that action after the attack could not erase the fact that the Queen had believed she possessed the right to begin it. William then drew the line. Camilla would no longer receive George's schedules, educational reports, rehearsal notes, or family plans. Every route of access would be closed immediately. Charles heard the decision beneath a portrait of his late mother. The king recognized that his son was not asking permission. He felt pride in William's resolve, but also unease, because royal hierarchy meant the formal order of authority inside the monarchy, and that order was shifting before him. Charles controlled household arrangements, yet William controlled whether his children appeared at ceremonies. Without the prince's cooperation, no official plan involving George could proceed. William revealed through a documented account from a senior aide that Camilla had interfered before. She had pressured staff to move George away from Charles during an anniversary photograph, warning that the placement made the succession look too immediate. Catherine added that the Queen had also questioned whether George should attend the coming national service. Her concern had not been protection. It had been an attempt to reduce his visibility. William removed George's schedule from the royal briefing folder, the official file for royal duties. He folded it once and placed it inside his jacket. Charles now faced the choice he had feared. Before dawn, he would either protect Camilla's authority or endorse William's restrictions. The family dispute had become a contest of command, and the king's decision would determine whose orders the palace obeyed by morning. By sunrise, the palace had changed around Camilla. Doors still opened, staff still bowed. Her title remained untouched. Yet royal power had begun moving without her. The king approved William's restrictions. Aides withdrew sensitive files, and invitations connected to Prince George disappeared from her office. For the first time, the Queen understood that authority could vanish before any announcement. All it required was for people to stop obeying. Charles signed a household directive removing Camilla's office from every decision involving George, Charlotte, and Louis. A household directive was an internal order controlling how royal staff handled duties and information. The document also demanded a review of every instruction issued under the Queen's authority. William received written confirmation that his children's schedules would remain under his and Catherine's control. The prince read it twice. Then his shoulders loosened. Camilla entered her office and opened the locked cabinet. The folders were gone. She asked her private secretary where the records concerning the Wales children had been taken. Returned by command of the king, came the answer. Camilla felt the humiliation immediately. Charles had not simply disagreed with her. He had formally declared that she could not be trusted near the monarchy's next generation. The punishment reached beyond marriage and into power. Charles spent the morning alone, knowing the order would deepen the rupture between them. He studied a family photograph featuring George and admitted to an aide, in a documented private account, that silence would have made him complicit. Catherine found her son beside a window with an unopened book across his knees. George told her he did not want to attend the national service because he feared making another mistake in front of Camilla. Catherine closed the book and took the chair opposite him. She promised that he would never again enter a royal room without knowing his parents would defend him. George listened, but the fear had not fully left. The palace review uncovered an unsigned memorandum recommending that George's public duties be delayed until his temperament was corrected. A memorandum was a written internal recommendation used to guide official decisions. Its language matched Camilla's private accusations almost word for word. An aide confirmed through a recorded interview that the Queen intended to present the document to Charles after the national service. Her attack had been tied to a planned effort to limit George's role. Charles cancelled the memorandum, removed the advisor responsible, and ordered every copy destroyed. Camilla then requested one final private meeting with Catherine. No secretaries, no husbands, no titles as shields. The consequences had begun, but the turning point would come when two women finally spoke, without the crown between them. There was no king in the room, no future monarch, no courtier prepared to interrupt when the conversation became dangerous. Catherine entered as a mother. Camilla waited as a woman facing the consequences of her own fear. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then the Queen made an admission no formal investigation could have forced from her. She had not attacked Prince George because she believed he was arrogant. She attacked him because his future reminded her that her own power would end. Catherine had agreed to meet at Clarence's house for one reason. She needed to know whether Camilla understood what she had done to George. Clarence's house was the royal residence used by Charles and the Queen, but inside that small sitting room, rank offered no protection. Camilla dismissed her staff and closed the door herself. Without Charles or William present, neither woman could push responsibility toward the men connecting them to the monarchy. Camilla admitted that seeing George beside the king during the rehearsal had made her feel invisible. She feared that Catherine, William, and their children were already becoming the emotional center of the institution. The Queen had watched the future arrive and mistaken it for an attack. Catherine answered without raising her voice. She said insecurity could explain cruelty, but it could never excuse it. Then she described George asking whether he deserved his place in the family. The words forced Camilla to face the wound beneath the scandal. Camilla confessed that she had aimed her resentment at the one person least able to defend himself. Her voice faltered when she remembered that George had always treated her with affection. Camilla reached into her handbag and removed a handwritten apology. She held it for a moment but did not offer it. Catherine told her that a letter meant nothing unless she could speak those words directly to the boy. Catherine's anger did not disappear. It hardened into resolve. She made clear that George's safety came before family harmony, public appearances, or Charles's wish to protect his marriage. Camilla then revealed, through the private conversation Catherine later documented, that an advisor had warned her the Wales family intended to marginalize her after Charles's reign. She admitted she chose to believe him because the warning gave her resentment permission to grow. Camilla surrendered all involvement in the Wales children's preparation and asked to apologize to George. Catherine allowed one brief meeting under strict conditions. Her son could leave whenever he wished, and he owed the Queen neither comfort nor forgiveness. The two women had reached an understanding, but understanding behind a locked door could not stop the story from exploding beyond the gates. The palace had hoped to contain the confrontation, but by the following morning, the country knew that something extraordinary had happened. The details spread through broadcasts, newspapers, and crowds gathering outside royal residences. Yet the public response was not driven only by scandal. It was driven by one powerful image: a young heir leaving Windsor beside his mother, while the king remained inside, confronting the woman who had wounded him. Charles authorized a palace statement confirming that Camilla would no longer take part in decisions concerning the Wales children. Officials called it a family and household restructuring, meaning a formal change in how royal duties, information, and authority were managed. The careful language could not hide the truth. The Queen had been removed from the future's private affairs. Broadcasters connected the decision directly to the attack on George. Commentators described Charles's response as a rare moment when the monarch had chosen his duty as a grandfather over the old instinct to protect royal appearances. The argument was no longer trapped behind palace doors. The London Chronicle captured the crisis on its front page. A photograph showed Catherine holding George's hand beneath the headline, "The King Draws the Line." The image became the story's defining symbol, not because the boy looked powerful, but because he looked painfully young. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace. One handwritten sign read, "Children before crowns." The message expressed what many people believed: George should never have been dragged into an adult struggle over status and influence. Catherine saw the newspaper at breakfast and immediately turned it face down. She feared that public sympathy could still make her son feel exposed. George noticed the movement, but did not ask what she was hiding. Charles watched a televised discussion alone. When one broadcaster called his intervention the first unmistakable act of a protective grandfather, the king lowered his head. He knew protection had come only after harm. Camilla received a briefing showing support shifting toward Catherine and George. The queen did not protest. She asked that no statement defend her conduct. Palace officials then discovered through a recorded staff interview that the leak had not come from the Wales household. An employee disturbed by the secret monitoring of George had released the details. Charles responded by ordering strict boundaries around every young royal. No assessment could be requested without parental consent and approval from the sovereign, the reigning monarch. Before the national service, George asked whether he still had to walk beside his grandfather. Charles answered that the place was his only, if he wanted it. The world had chosen its symbol. Now one child's decision would determine whether fear had won. The final judgment did not come from a court, a newspaper, or a palace announcement. It came from Prince George. Standing between his parents before the national service, the heir chose not to hide. He would walk beside Charles, not because tradition demanded it, but because his family had proved that duty did not require silence in the face of cruelty. Camilla's authority had diminished. Catherine's boundary had held, and the king had understood what protection truly required. Camilla met George in a drawing room before the service, with Catherine beside him. The queen remained seated, so the boy would not feel overwhelmed. A drawing room was a reception space, used for personal meetings. Camilla spoke plainly. She said her accusation had been wrong, George had done nothing to deserve it, and her anger belonged to adults, not to him. The queen did not defend herself. She did not soften the truth. George listened without moving. Then he said her words had made him believe his family did not want him to become king one day. The admission shook Camilla. She apologized again and asked for nothing in return. Catherine thanked her son for speaking honestly and ended the meeting after only a few minutes. She offered no reconciliation, but she recognized that Camilla had finally accepted responsibility. Charles found George waiting near the procession entrance. The king told his grandson that a future monarch was not someone who never felt fear. He was someone supported while facing it. George reached for his grandfather's hand, and Charles closed his fingers around his. William watched and understood that his father had chosen the right side, even if he had chosen it late. The prince accepted the household safeguards and made clear they would remain permanent. Camilla kept her title but lost all authority over the Wales children's upbringing, schedules, and preparation. The queen accepted the reduced role as the cost of crossing a moral boundary. Charles established a new rule inside the family. Rank could never be used to intimidate children, and loyalty to the crown could never demand silence from their parents. The confrontation became a defining moment. Catherine had refused to bend. William had defended his son. Charles had placed protection above marital convenience. Camilla's attack did not weaken George's future. It exposed the fear surrounding it. By facing that fear and accepting consequences, the family preserved something greater than unity, the young heir's trust. The crown survived because one family finally chose a child's dignity over the comfort of silence. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.